Have you ever noticed that after a long day at the pool or beach, your fingers seem to be all wrinkly and shriveled up? It's like the skin on your fingers has been boiled and then crumpled by an over-eager toddler. This weird phenomenon is known as water pruning, and it happens when you spend a lot of time in water. But why does this happen? This question stumped scientists for a long time. But today we finally have an answer. A recent study may have discovered the reason why your fingers prune in the water, and it has to do with the nerves in your fingertips. This discovery could help scientists better understand how our brains process sensations like touch, temperature, and pain. And it could even help them develop new ways to treat people with nerve damage. So let's get into it. The first thing that we should address is what exactly is happening here. Why are our fingers turning into prunes? Well, people used to think that this was caused by osmosis. That would make sense since your body absorbs water and the skin on your fingers shrivels up. However, researchers discovered that you actually lose a small amount of salt through your skin when you prune, which means that osmosis can't be the whole story. They also ruled out the idea that your body tries to get rid of excess water by shedding skin. So what else could it be? Well, a recent study published in the journal PNAS may have solved this mystery. Researchers studied 30 people with an average age of 25. They stuck their fingers in ice-cold water for about 2.5 hours and then scanned their brains with an MRI machine while they did. This allowed the researchers to see how the brain processes sensations like touch, temperature, and pain. These are all carried by neurons or nerve cells that send signals from the fingertips to the brain. The researchers noticed that the neurons responsible for sensing temperature and pain were much more active after the participants had been in the water for a while. They also noticed that the brain areas connected to these neurons were dramatically less active. In other words, the part of the brain that processes these sensations seemed to be shutting down. This led the researchers to hypothesize that your fingers prune in the water as a way to protect yourself from potential harm. You see, when you're in cold water for a long time, it can start to feel painful. Your brain's job is to keep you safe from pain, so it sends signals to the relevant parts of the body to protect you. In this case, the brain sends signals to the blood vessels in your fingers, causing them to constrict or narrow. This reduces the amount of blood flow to your fingertips, which makes them colder and less sensitive to pain. At the same time, the brain activates the sweat glands in your skin, which helps to warm your fingers back up to normal temperature. Together, these mechanisms work to keep you from getting hurt, and they cause your fingers to prune. But if this is true, why do some people prune more than others? Well, the researchers believe that it has to do with the amount of body fat a person has. People with more body fat tend to have less cold sensitivity because the fat acts as an insulator. So it makes sense that people with higher body fat would prune less in cold water. This hypothesis fits with the data they collected from their participants. On average, men pruned more than women, and men tend to have less body fat than women. Additionally, people who pruned more were better able to tolerate cold temperatures. So why is it important to understand why our fingers prune in the water? Well, the same process happens throughout our entire body when we are exposed to extreme temperatures. By studying this process in the fingers, scientists can learn more about how the brain responds to changes in temperature. This knowledge could help them develop new ways to treat people with nerve damage. And for example, if we can better understand how the brain shuts down sensation in response to pain, we may be able to develop new treatments for people who suffer from chronic pain. In short, the next time you go swimming and your fingers start to prune, just remember that you are helping scientists solve one of the great mysteries of the universe. Thank you for listening.